Another video, another race overlay analysis, this time from Portugal. This is my first race in Portugal of the year with my new Portuguese team, Obidos. Again, check out my Instagram if you want to stay up to date with that kind of thing. I don't always post the latest updates on here, but I'll try and keep you guys as updated as possible. Anyway, this is a race called Classica Santo Terço. Really nice race. I really enjoyed this one. It was, to summarize the parcours, it was like 125k with just over 2,000 meters climbing, with 4 major climbs, the last and first, but the last of which being like an 8-minute cobbled climb, a slight flat section in the middle, but yeah, you get the idea. Cobbled climb. There was a fair few cobbled sectors, so that made it quite interesting. And yeah, just sort of trying to get used to the style of racing in Portugal. It's definitely different from maybe a normal UCI race. But yeah, just trying to learn as much as possible and hopefully get a result here. So I'd set the camera to turn on the final lap. So yeah, you can see like 20k to go. Here we're on a little descent before, not the last long cobble climb I mentioned, but there's a little sharp kicker coming up here, which another one where you want to be in pretty good position for this, especially when it's that short and sharp. It's just an easier effort the further towards the front you are, and it pays to spend that little bit of energy on good positioning. So we're coming down here 60k an hour, and it just turns right up into the steep section. Tried to carry some momentum, gain a couple places, because every little helps. Get up to like, I think 700 watts in the end of this one, just to try and hold some position. And then towards the top, I tend to sort of let it sag a little bit, just save a little bit of energy, because at that point, that's when you sort of know that it's not going full fireworks. You can relax, and then using my larger mass, come forward on the downhills again, because that's where, I find it a lot easier relative to a lot of these guys who will be, 10, 15 kilos lighter than me. Which actually, that is probably the most apparent difference I've noticed just in this race, racing in Portugal. They race really, really polarized. So they take the climbs like full, and then on the descents, the pace just doesn't stay on. Well, obviously I've only got a very small sample size at the moment, but it seems like they just take it harder on the climbs and a bit easier on the descents compared to other races I've done, which means, from what I've heard also, this is a combination of what other people have told me, so it tends to be the case where a lot of people will actually get back on if they've been dropped over the climb, so it's a bit more forgiving despite being a bit harder on the climb. Anyway, we're getting to this final cobble climb I mentioned. It starts with this lovely concrete strip on the side, which saves a huge amount of power. You can see like how much more power I have to do once I come off that. Yeah, like I mentioned, this climb is in 2 sections. The first one wasn't really too bad. I mean, that could just be because obviously we're all fresher, but it seems they also don't take the first part of climbs as hard, and then at the top, that's when they go like full warp speed. But yeah, here, fairly steady on the cobbles. Again, that kind of benefits me a little bit as a bigger rider, I think. Yeah, just trying to hold position, and then as you'll see in a minute, it gets to the flat section. That's when I'm like sick. So I go from doing around 380 holding position here. I still drop down, I think, to around 330 watts and just start overtaking everyone, going almost to the front actually. Had to eat some of the more gnarly cobbles on the side here, but you can see like, yeah, down below 300 and still moving up fast. But hey, this could be a massive blunder and a massive mistake, because maybe the recovery that everyone else is getting is the difference between having a more sharp effort for the last half, but I don't think I'm using that much going at 300 watts at this point. So here an attack goes. This was a really big mistake. I had momentum. It would have been relatively easy to actually follow one of those wheels and be pretty much third wheel, but I hesitated. See, I'm accelerating now, but everyone's accelerating, so that 3-second difference in when you start acceleration is the difference between being third wheel and maybe 20th wheel at the moment, for very little difference in energy. So this is one of those things where looking at the video back over, you can actually see some of those key mistakes. So here we're in this little flat / downhill section, and you've just heard me shout. Well, if the volume's on, you just heard me shout because my seat post slipped. This is pretty normal with travel. Sometimes the seat post doesn't get set after you build your bike back up to the bike box. I tightened it once, but I didn't double tighten it after a couple of days of riding, which normally you need to do for any bike. Yeah, so long story short, I'm absolutely raging. The saddle has gone pretty much all the way down, and I can't ride in the saddle. It's like riding a BMX. So now I'm trying to ride out the saddle, which of all the climbs on the cobbles is really, really not ideal. So you can see I'm just getting overtaken by everyone. I feel like I'm just going absolutely nowhere. Trying to maintain my cool. I'd say composure is one of my strengths, but this race I kind of decided to lose it a little bit, because obviously you can see it's also going really fast at this point. Like I'm doing 500 watts and going backwards. And yeah, like I said, on the cobbles, you're just bouncing around when you're out the saddle, can't get planted, and then obviously the mental side of just having an issue is not good. So that I'm not sure I would have been in that front selection going over the top of the climb, but it certainly hindered any chances I did have, which is frustrating, especially because it was, you know, my mistake for not double checking something like that. So I've cut to, we're almost at the top of the climb now, and I'm literally last man in what is, I guess, group 2 now. So a group of 9 that ended up going clear on the climb. This is group 2. I'm last man. I look behind me and I just see a vast emptiness, which is frankly quite terrifying. But at the same time, I'm at 192 beats a minute, which I think is one of, if not the highest of the year. That's pretty much as high as I'm going to get at this point in my career, I think. Gone are the days of hitting 200, I believe. But yeah, I'm absolutely gassing myself, riding out the saddle the whole way up. Yeah, it's frustrating, and then, you know, you get over the top of a crest, you want to sit down and churn a gear, and I just can't sit down. So you can either keep riding out the saddle, but the quads are starting to give up at this point. So yeah, I was just empty, which this hurts. Watching this back hurts as well, and I just felt like there was nothing I could do, especially with there's not many Ks to go. So I didn't even consider trying to call back the car, knowing that behind the carnage was there. So here's my teammate Theo coming past. He eventually got back into that group as well. Yeah, at one point I realised, oh, it actually kind of feels like a dropper post, like the classic Matej Mohoric. So I realised I could rail the corners pretty well. So I sort of got into a bit of a rhythm, and then as soon as it got onto the flat sections again, I remembered that I just couldn't really put out any kind of power. These guys, really, one of these guys overcooked it into this corner. But yeah. So eventually the car caught up with me. They had actually been on the radio, so I told them that, you know, the seat post is done. And at this point I was kind of defeated, as much as I hate to admit it, but I was like, look, the seat post is done, it's too late. And then I was like, oh yeah, okay, let's try and fix it. So we had Bruno the mechanic, Mika the driver, the DS, and yeah, I was like, okay, let's just try it. And Bruno was like, hold on here, and yeah, he got it done in like, I don't know, like 15 seconds or less probably. And he eyeballed it and pretty much got my exact saddle height. So that was actually really, really efficient. Luckily it was on a straighter bit of road, so we didn't need to worry about corners. And then yeah, I was able to get back going and got into the bunch with I think like 2 or 3k to go. So it kind of wasn't all lost at this point. So the finish, which was very shortly approaching, was a one-ish, maybe just over 1 minute cobble climb, which normally I would say really suits me. It's like right up my street, but having gone through all the effort with the saddle, I wasn't really feeling confident to back myself. So I thought, you know, let's just say, hey, I'm going to do a lead out for the guys, and hopefully that can help them get a better result. So I was like, yeah, I'll lead you guys out. And we went up on the right side, and yeah, I just tried to keep a good position. The group wasn't that big, so in retrospect, maybe it wasn't, I don't know how much it helped. I'd like to think it helped a lot, but I don't know. Anyway, so I helped to try and keep them in good position. I was maybe a bit over enthusiastic with the shouting, but I think it's good to be really good with communication in this kind of situation, or just any finish. I mean, communication is really important, just to let you know where your teammates are and that kind of thing. So it was nice to get on the front, get in the aero, tuck, and lift the pace to absolute warp speed. Going at 70k an hour is always a bit of fun, and I'm telling you, 450 watts in the aero tuck, you're always going to be trucking. So here I think it's literally like a handful of seconds until we enter the cobbled section. Just towards the beginning of that, some of the other teams came from behind, which makes sense. I guess there were other guys who also wanted to do a lead out, so they had a bit more energy sitting on for that bit. And yeah, it was just like classic, like chaotic fight for position a bit. At one point I thought, oh, actually I might still have something left in the tank, so I held some position and then quickly realised that no, I had no matches left. And a nice encouraging shout to my teammate as he came past, and then my other teammate Joao, who also did really well, just came past there too. So yeah, that's the end of my ride for that day. I'll be honest, at the time I was like, I would have made front group. It didn't make a difference. Like, there was no podium or win on the cards, which is like my main objectives. And I was kind of content with the fact that I could still do a good job. And then, coming to editing it, I was actually like a little bit more frustrated, looking back at it, and just like, that kind of frustration. Especially, that's just how bike racing is sometimes. And I think you can only try and take away the positives. And for me, it's definitely reminding myself to double check the seat post bolts. Anyway, that is the end of this race. My teammates, I think it was 13th and 14th, or 14th and 15th. I can't remember the exact number, but they did pretty well, which meant they actually won the best club team award. So we got a little trip on the podium for that one. But yeah, all in all, a really fun race. And this next Sunday, which as you're watching this might be in a couple of days, we've got the next race, which is Classica Arabida, which is a UCI 1.2. That should be a circuit that suits us. It might come to a sprint, it might be a small group, we don't know, but it looks really exciting and I'm looking forward to getting stuck in again. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and see you in the next one.